So we're going to get started. Welcome everybody. Right now we have, and if you have questions about Zoom, please chat. Use the chat function at the bottom. You can chat to everyone, or you can just chat to Rita, and we will try to answer any technical questions. Right at the bottom, you can see the chat box and the number of participants. So we have 55 participants on this call. So yay for citizen participation. I think that's pretty amazing. But that also means that we're going to be managing that, so we have an opportunity for everybody to share. And we have a pretty well thought out agenda in terms of presentations and opportunities for people to talk. So I'm just going to introduce myself. I just want to welcome everybody to this Tookany Creek Trail feasibility study. This is our second public meeting. And here are all our partners. I want to thank everybody for being here, and they will have opportunities to introduce themselves as we move forward. I'm going to take a minute and recognize people in just a second, but I think I want to move to the next slide. So this is a real collaboration, this project, between Cheltenham Township, the Tookany-Tacony-Frankford Watershed Partnership, the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, and the funding came from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission for this feasibility study to look at the Tookany Creek Trail and the opportunities for that. The Tookany-Tacony-Frankford Watershed Partnership is an organization that focuses on improving our 30 square mile watershed. I hope that most of you have heard of us and have interacted with us. We are about 15 years old, and you know, our job again is to improve our watershed, and one of the ways that we do that, and I think these pictures, these beautiful pictures that Doug found or Xenia found show that, which is that we get people next to water. Our job is to really educate people and connect people to water and talk about the challenges that our creeks have and how we can improve them. And we do that in a whole bunch of different ways: education, engagement, restoration. And we know that what's really sort of been the driver for us in this work is the interest in getting people next to water, how critical it is to have trails that get people next to the Tookany Creek, the Tookany Creek in Montgomery County, and the Frankford Creek further down in Philadelphia. So before I recognize folks, I just want to let you know that these photos show our focus in the city as an organization is really on Tookany Creek Park. And Patrick's going to talk about the circuit, but that's a circuit trail. And you can see here on that picture on the left with all the shovels, that is, I think it's important to share that is a connection that the city of Philadelphia funded, taking the Tookany Creek Trail under Roosevelt Boulevard. So that sort of shows you, it's a beautiful vista, and it really shows you how we get people next to creeks and have an opportunity to talk about water. Did I leave anything out, Patrick?
I think that's just fine, Julie.
Okay, so what I want to do now is just recognize some folks that are on the call. I'm going to go back and look at the participant list and make sure that I don't miss anybody, but I wanted to recognize we have some VIPs, and we're really happy that we have this level of interaction. We know how important this trail is and how much community support and elected official support is. So just want to thank Janet Bernstein is joining us. She represents Representative Joe Hohenstein. She's on his staff. David Cohen from the Cheltenham School Board is with us. Jean Lynch, I believe, is with us from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, a very important partner and funder. Ellen Miramontes from the Montgomery County Planning Commission. I think Daniel Norris was going to join for a little bit, Commissioner Dan Norris. We also have Nicholas Perez, who's one of our partners. He's the principal of Cheltenham, of the Cheltenham Elementary School. We love working with him. And my type is so small. We also have members of our Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So if you're on, you should raise your hand. And we really appreciate your participation so far. I also think I saw that Brian Hinson, who is the director of Parks and Recreation in Cheltenham Township is on the call as well. So if I left anybody out, please chat and yell at me, and we will make sure that we recognize you later. Again, we're going to keep everybody muted as we move through this presentation, and then we're going to be taking you, and Patrick's going to talk about this, so I don't want to take away his conversation. So go for it, Patrick. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Julie. And my name is Patrick Starr. I'm with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, and we're a partner with TTF in this terrific effort to consider the feasibility of creating a trail. I want to say a couple of quick things in terms of housekeeping. I'm not sure, but we have a slide that says that these proceedings are being recorded. I thought it was going to be here already in the progression. There it is. So the interest in recording is that we want to capture the input, and we also want to make the presentation by our consultant team available for people to look at who were not able to join us during this particular time frame. So thank you for going back. Let me just say that I not only work for the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, a statewide organization that works to protect and restore Pennsylvania's environment. I'm also the Pennsylvania Vice Chair of the Circuit Trails Coalition, which has been referenced already and will be again. This is not my first time at a feasibility meeting for a trail, though it is my first time to do that by Zoom. We do trail work all across Pennsylvania. To the gentleman who started to speak about concerns, I want to mention that tonight's meeting is an opportunity for us to present information that's been created by our consultant team about the trail feasibility. It's also for us to listen to you, but for everyone on the call, I want to make it very clear, this is not the night that we'll be making decisions about building or not building a trail. Let me be very clear. The people who will decide to build or not build the trail will be all of you, and you will do that through your elected township commissioners. This is not the purpose of tonight's meeting. The purpose is to listen and to get your feedback. If you're not able to stay through the whole evening and you have a concern, a question, or an opportunity you want to bring to light, Julie drew your attention to the chat function. So one of the things that you can do with Zoom, it's like leaving us a note. If you went to a regular meeting, you might hand us a note. You can write your comment in chat. And so, sir, if you're unable to stay until the Q&A part of this and this discussion, please feel free to send us your message in chat. I want to say that while there's a professional team that you'll be meeting shortly, the experts about building a trail in Cheltenham are all of you, not the professionals. You live in the community, you use the resources in the community. And so I'm, as you can see from my virtual background, I'm someplace in Philadelphia. I don't live in Cheltenham. We're here to listen. Why does the Pennsylvania Environmental Council do trails, and why are we here tonight? Let me just share some thoughts, and then I'll turn it over to our consultants, and we'll review the agenda, then our consultants. Trails are civic spaces, community places. You already know that in Cheltenham because you have existing trails, and I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of township residents using those trails. It's a marvelous thing. We think they build community. They also provide safety in the form of safe transportation alternatives. Children can walk to school, folks can go do errands, walk to the train. They also provide exercise, and there are documented health benefits to being near or on a trail. Exercise reduces the likelihood of many diseases, and we all know about that, I believe. Low-cost transportation is certainly another factor, since basically use of trails typically requires shoes, maybe a bicycle, or perhaps a wheelchair. You also get outdoors, which is one of the reasons why the Pennsylvania Environmental Council is interested in trails. So next slide, and then So I think we have the recording slide again and then the agenda. So let me just quickly indicate that we're just about on time. We're about to turn it over to the consultants. They're going to review several items with you. We've done extensive public outreach already. And actually one of my staff will be talking a bit about that. There's a project overview, pardon me, that Bob and Doug will do, our consultants. Results from the public outreach will be reviewed by one of my staff, Zhenya Naliweko. Initial observations and trail alternatives is what the consultant, again, will present to you. Then we will have time that we will break into small groups. And for those of you that Zoom is new, trust me that this will work, and we'll explain it when we get there. But you'll go into a small group with a facilitator. We have several on the call. And then back to the large group at roughly 8 o'clock for report outs and Q&A. It's Zoom, folks. You're in your own homes. If you need to leave, stop your video or simply leave the meeting. It's one of the conveniences of Zoom that you can control your participation up to a point. And for the purposes of the presentation clarity, we're going to keep you muted through the presentation. Put your questions into the chat box. If you have any question or any comment that is created by the presentation you're hearing, put it into the chat box. We will save the chat box, so we will save that for posterity. All right, next slide. And now I'm going to introduce Bob Thomas and Doug Mazey. I think those of you who were on in the conversation at the start know that Bob is someone who knows your community extremely well. He's not a resident, but he spent a lot of his time nearby and in your community. And Doug and Bob make a fantastic team. In my world, Bob in particular is a respected, I'll say, father of trails in our region. So although we did a competitive bid process to select this consultant team, I will say you got the best. So it's terrific to have Doug and Bob with us. Take it away, gentlemen.
Good, let me unmute. Good, thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, the map that you see is a map showing the circuit trails. You can see, Doug, you'll be able to point, right?
I can, yes.
Okay, yeah, if you, the trail that we're looking at, you can point to starts at the Delaware River, goes up along Frankford Creek, then Tookany Creek, and then comes into Cheltenham Avenue, as you know, where the parkway is located. And that corridor continues. Only part of it's done to High School Road, and there's a gap in there. There we go. But what you can see is the green is sections that are complete. Then there are other sections that are underway, gaps that have to be filled. But the nice thing is that the trail will eventually connect to the Cheltenham Trail and tie into Fort Washington State Park and the Wissahickon. And going down the other way, when this is done, and it's underway now, it will take you down to the trail along the Delaware River, which is the East Coast Greenway, and that'll take you right into downtown Philadelphia. And if you're really off for a big ride, it'll take you all the way to Key West, Florida. But so we're looking at enhancing a trail that has been a local trail for a long time, but also making other connections. Next. Of course, Cheltenham Township is an important township in Montgomery County, and there's a county plan as well that's been implemented for a long time. Montgomery County is a true leader in trails. They've developed the Schuylkill River Trail, the Perkiomen Trail. The Perkiomen Trail is not too far, the Pennypack Trail is not too far away, as well as the Wissahickon and other trails. Next. Cheltenham Township has looked at open space and trails as well. This is a map from 2006. You can see the solid line is the piece of Tookany Creek Parkway with its side walking path. And then these are other trails that were proposed in that study. And then also the Cheltenham Trail you can see way off in the western end of the township. And there's been a lot of planning done since this. These trails, again, are not just within the township. They would tie into the Tookany Creek Park, as well as Burlhorn Park, and go up to the Pennypack Trail and into Bernathen and so forth. Next. But this is the part that the feasibility study is focusing on, from Cheltenham Avenue up to Levick Street, up to Ashbourne Road, and then following Tookany Creek Parkway to New 2nd Street. That's Jenkintown Rd to New 2nd, and then looking at making the gap, closing the gap between Gimble Field and New 2nd, and then going up to High School Road and tying into the center of Elkins Park. Next. This map here is in more detail, and this shows, and you can get a copy, you will have a copy of this presentation available, so if you want to blow it up and see, you know, what's the planned trail, what's in progress, what's existing. It says existing trail, but does not meet circuit standards. And the circuit is a network of 800 miles of the 10 counties, including Philadelphia, of trails that are for walking, biking, meet ADA requirements, are suitable for wheelchairs and people with disabilities. The current trail is in many places a narrow walking path with a loose surface. And one of the things that we'll be looking at, and there'll be questions, there have been questions on the questionnaire that's been available, you know, about surfaces and width of trail and so forth. Next. And that's, again, the section. All right, well, then let's go on. I'd like Z to say a bit about all the public outreach that's been going on.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for joining. So as alluded to, I'm going to go over just a bit of the public outreach that has been conducted so far. And I mention up top that most of this has been collected from stakeholder and key person interviews, as well as a survey. So far, about when I made this slide, it was 445 people. Today, we've probably got another 5 to 10 in, so that's probably up to 455. And if anyone's interested in filling out this survey who hasn't done it so far, I'd be happy to share that survey with you. So as you can see, great interest, largely from Cheltenham residents, 73.2%. So it's a lot of people from Cheltenham who are saying these things and giving this input on the proposed trail. Overwhelmingly positive reviews so far, and 91% of survey respondents use these existing trails, and 97% would like additional trails in the community. So that bodes well for the future. Another thing we asked about on the survey was how do you use Cheltenham's existing trails? And I'm not going to go through every single one, but the most popular were walking, nature viewing, fitness, bicycling, and jogging. And the Tookany Creek Trail would offer an expansion of those. We asked about what kind of surface people would be interested in, and a crushed stone surface was slightly preferred to asphalt. And we'll actually have a chance to take a look at what some different surface types might look like later on in the presentation, and you'll get to answer a poll question about what kind of surface you're interested in. Of course, that's not binding, as Patrick had said, but it'll just give you a chance to think a little bit more about it. And residents are very interested in seeing connections to community hubs. So the Elkins Park businesses, the Elkins Park Regional Rail Station, giving students and children a safer way to walk to middle schools and high schools, safer ways to walk to the Cheltenham Arts Center, safer ways to get to libraries. So these are all opportunities that this trail could provide. And then I won't go into this in too much detail, but we did interviews of several people, actually over a dozen at this point, between township commissioners, staff, other people involved in the township. And, you know, these are some of the hopes and dreams. An off-road trail was really something that was hoped for because, as I'm sure Cheltenham residents know, there is a lot of fast-moving roads within the township that are kind of scary to bike on or walk on or run across. So treating crosswalks and intersections, as well as having the trail off-road as much as possible, was desired. Amenities along the trail, trash and recycling cans so that it doesn't, you know, build up litter, as well as signage reminding people to please keep the trail beautiful. Benches so that people can take a break in the shade if it's a hot day, as well as water filling and bike repair stations were all hoped for. And then also how to get people engaged in the trail. So we spoke with one of the people involved with the school board, and they said, get the youth involved, have a trail day to get kids out on the trail and actively using it, and maybe they'll bring their parents or bring their friends. And we also spoke about some concerns people had, which again, we'll have a chance to discuss toward the end of the meeting today. So flooding, erosion, stormwater runoff was all things that were talked about, but as I'm sure Bob and Doug could talk to you about at length, there are ways to mediate these sorts of issues, as well as the cost to build and maintain, privacy and safety, and what'll happen with traffic once the trail is being constructed. So like I said, definitely a chance to fill out this fill out this survey, and we hope to hear from everyone in the days to come.
Okay, so let's take a look then at the corridor that we're actually looking at for the trail. What you see on this map is a heavy black line, which represents the principal alignment. Now, this map is at a very small scale. It was not drawn that you could see even which side of the road it would be on, or what properties it would go through. We have much larger maps, which we're using for that purpose. And Doug, you'll be able to say a few words about those in a short while. But we did want to draw at least one map that gave an overview of where is the corridor, where are some alternate alignments, and what are the parks and major areas that we're connecting to. So starting at the bottom, you can see the existing Tookany Creek Park and the Tookany Trail, which comes up to Cheltenham Avenue. That was put in many years ago in the 1970s and is really over 40 years old and is up for some improvements. But then what we're looking at is a trail on one side of Cobb's Tookany Creek Parkway or the other, going from Cheltenham Avenue up to Ashmead Road and up to the Cheltenham Village Center, where Ashbourne Road, Central Avenue, Ryers Avenue, etc., all come together. We did look at some of the Cheltenham Township parkland that's on the east side of the creek. You can see that thin line further back down, Doug.
Down here.
Yeah, in here and coming up there's some green tint in the back. That's parkland. We want to have a connection to the Cheltenham. We mentioned the Elkins Park station. There are actually 3 train stations that give access to the park. One at the Cheltenham station itself, Martins Mill Road, and also the further down the Lawndale station, which is south of Levick Street. And one of the things I know for myself that I enjoy is, like, if I lived in Elkins Park, that I could take a train down to Wayne Junction, transfer to the train, and come back up to a station, and then have myself a nice 2 or 3 mile long walk without having to put a car at both ends. That's a nice thing. And there's also a lot of public transit. Continuing north from Cheltenham Village, you can see we identify a corridor along the parkway, a alternative route on the west or south side of the creek. The other thing we did was to meet with the engineers from the Ashbourne Meadows development, which is underway now. And they are installing, they're actually dedicating open space to the township for the use of all the citizens, including everyone on this call, as well as links up to Melrose Park and up to Jenkintown Rd and Ashbourne Road, so that many of the communities that now would have to take a long walk or a long bike ride around through traffic will have a direct trail connection to Tookany Creek. It's really going to be a tremendous boon. Continuing west, the trail now ends at New 2nd Street, and there was land acquired a long time ago for the parkway. It's never been used. So there was a detailed feasibility study done, about 3 years ago by RBA Group, looking at how to connect to Gimble Field. And then we've been looking at options for going along Gimble Field, along a little piece of Tookany Creek Parkway that exists, and then tying into the existing trail that goes from Mill Road up to High School Road and High School Park. And then you can see a line just showing how the trail would eventually continue. going back down, go near Conklin Pool, Doug. We also saw Conklin Pool. I remember I grew up just a few blocks from Cheltenham Township in West Oak Lane and spent a heck of an amount of time there. I went to day camp on the grounds of Linwood Hall and then on the grounds of what was then Beaver College. I still have plenty of friends in Cheltenham, so I got all over as a kid on my one-speed bicycle. And I remember Conklin Pool at that time was the Cheltenham Swim Club. And many swim clubs have gone out of business because of the economics, but this fortunately was acquired as a park. And one of the things we're looking at is having a link from the trail up to the pool. Obviously, before we make any specific recommendations, we have to talk with property owners. There's a church property there, but they might like the idea themselves of being connected by trail, that if parishioners can come to church or they can go swimming and not have to get in a car and all the choking traffic that you have, that would be great. And you can also see then the link up through Hope Lodge to Burholm Park, and going through there, the Ryers Mansion, the library, through the grounds of the hospital. And as you continue north out of the park and up to the center of Fox Chase, there are restaurants and other facilities. And then you would get on the Pennypack Trail right at the and there's another train station there. So a lot of nice links and really give access for all sorts of activities. Next.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Doug to go back to Cheltenham Avenue and just talk in a little more detail about some of these what these different corridors are. So Doug, why don't you take it, just point out the index map and then.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Doug Mazie. I'm a planner and project designer at Campbell Thomas & Company. So from all the feedback that we've been receiving so far through the survey and community outreach, we've really tried to take a stab at looking at some of these alternatives and looking at some of the detailed alignments as we pass through the corridor. We've broken the corridor that Bob just went over into 3 segments. So this first section we're going to be looking at is from Cheltenham Ave up to Central. And as you can see in this map here, there's locator numbers along this corridor. I'm going to show you some photos as we pass through this corridor, and those numbers will be identified on each of those photos. So let's take a little walk through. The other thing to notice as we're going through this presentation, there's going to be several poll questions. So just be ready for those. I'll definitely let you know when they come up, and it'll give you the opportunity to provide some feedback while we're going through this corridor. So this is the existing trailhead on the Philadelphia side, continuing down to the Tookany Creek Trail. It comes out to Cheltenham Ave at Tookany Creek Parkway. And we're looking at options north of here as we continue up towards Levick Street. This is some of the existing conditions along Tookany Creek Parkway. You can see that there's quite a large space given for vehicular traffic. We have some asphalt side path, or what could potentially be a side path, and we have 3 traffic lanes, one being a turning lane in the middle. Beyond this hillside on the right-hand side of my screen, the hill drops fairly quickly down to the creek, which is a little bit of a challenge when developing some of these trails. As we continue north, we pass along the edge of Tookany Creek Parkway. Meadows Country Club is one of 2 golf courses along its route, and they own property on both sides of Tookany Creek Parkway here. As you can see, there's some challenging areas that we will definitely be working very closely with the golf course and with the community to make sure that the conditions are both amenable to a trail and to the vehicular traffic as well as the golf course. Let's dive into poll question number 1 here. So I'm going to ask Rita to pull up poll question number 1.
All righty.
So do you feel comfortable walking or biking on the Tookany Creek Parkway between Cheltenham Ave and Levick Street? There's an option here to provide your feedback, and as you can see, the live feedback is being provided as we speak. So you have about 20 seconds to fill this out.
I'm not sure, Doug, that the participants see the live feedback, but they will when Rita publishes the results.
Okay, great.
You're seeing it
Here are
as
the
a
results.
co-host. We see it as a co-host.
Okay, so as you can see, the live results have just popped up. We have a couple of people who do feel comfortable currently along Tookany Creek Parkway in this location, and the majority, 74% there, have stated that they don't currently feel comfortable along that portion. 7 are not quite sure. Okay.
This is one of the exciting elements about a Zoom meeting, folks, that you get live and immediate feedback.
And this is as new to us as it is to you, so hopefully this is going well so far. I believe it is. Let's go straight into poll question 1B here.
All right, hang on.
So just as an explanation, this image you're seeing on the screen is an example of what we call a typical side path. It's separated from the main portion of the road. We have a buffer area, which can be either grass, fencing, or different materials to make sure that that side path feels a little bit safer. So this is one of the options we're looking at along Tookany Creek Parkway, and we're just curious if you would feel that a separated side path similar to this image would encourage you to walk or bike there.
Yeah, and this is not in Europe, in Germany or Switzerland. It's in Abington Township, right on Fox Chase Road.
And I might just add that in some cases, even stormwater management can be incorporated into such a facility using either the buffer or the side of the side path. So you can achieve multiple objectives with this sort of facility.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, can everyone see the results there?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 95% would feel much safer with a side path along this section, and about 5% are not quite sure. Obviously, the details would have to be looked at, so totally understand that if you don't have a decision at this point, it's definitely understandable. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay, as you approach Levick Street, as many members of the community are probably aware, there's a new bridge that has been placed across. Oh, is this the results that I'm seeing, Rita?
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. So as you can see the results, the majority of people, 95%, would actually like to see a side path along that section, and 5% are not quite sure. So yeah, this is Levick Street and Tookany Creek Parkway. This new bridge is a great amenity and potential connection for the trail. There's been a nice wide sidewalk that's been included as part of that bridge. And we've already heard from a number of residents up in the Lawndale neighborhood that they would really like to see a better connection down to the existing trail and some of the resources in Cheltenham Ave. And that goes both ways. The Levick train station is up Levick Street here and would make a great connection from this direction. So as we continue north beyond Levick Street up towards Ashbourne Road, you can see that the road has narrowed down to 2 lanes. It's a little bit more comfortable as far as a bicycle perspective goes, and there's a little bit more room along the edge of the road that could enable an extension of a path or side path. Just beyond these trees here, you can see the creek. We want to make sure that as we continue north, we tie into the existing resources. Tookany Creek Park is just across the creek, and there's a number of existing bridges that we will ensure that we tie into as we continue to plan this trail. This is Tookany Creek Park, just on the other side. As Bob mentioned, as he was going over the overall study corridor, there's an opportunity to tie through Tookany Creek Park out towards the Cheltenham train station. This is us approaching the more major intersection at Ashbourne Road and Central Ave. As you can see, there are some sidewalks, but they're not continuous. We want to make sure that this intersection, if we do bring the trail through here, is both suitable for vehicular traffic as well as pedestrian and bicycle traffic. There's a number of different solutions that can be looked at, and I'm going to just launch a poll question here to get some initial feedback of how you might feel about some of these improvements. So what treatments should we consider incorporating to help improve safety at the trail road intersections? Don't just think about this Central Ave intersection, think about New 2nd Street also, and the other intersections along the trail corridor. And just as a quick explanation here, looking at this right image, we have some painted crosswalks that help delineate the pedestrian areas. We have some curb bump outs along the edge of the corners. This helps narrow the crossing distance for the pedestrian and bicyclist. And there's also options to have bicycle and pedestrian friendly traffic signalization in which as you approach the intersection, you could have the option to push a button and enable a filter to allow a bicycle or pedestrian to cross the street.
All right, I'm going to close polling now.
Okay. So looking at the feedback here, it looks like people would like to see, 47% would like to see the trail distance, the crossing distance shortened. Like I said, that can be done by both curb bump outs. There's also options for brakes in the roadway to allow for a pedestrian to stop as they cross. 100% of people would like to differentiate the space between pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular space. That's very interesting, and definitely some great solutions for working through that corridor. And 70% would like to see bike pedestrian specific signals. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Also at this intersection, I'm sure a number of residents are aware of the shovel works. There's a number of historic features along the trail corridor, and we want to make sure that the history of Cheltenham Township is really evident in the trail that we propose. There's opportunities for pedestrian signage, there's opportunities for signage that really identifies historic features and provides an educational element. This directly ties into some of the efforts being done by TTF throughout the corridor. So if there's any other historic elements along the trail, we'd definitely like to hear about that later on. So this next section we're looking at from Central Ave all the way to New 2nd Street. So as many of you know, this corridor already has an existing footpath. It's about 4 or 5 feet wide, and it transitions between earthen, crushed stone, and asphalt paving along its route. As we mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that this trail is usable for multiple modes of transportation and is brought up to the circuit trail standards. We can share these maps later on, but for now, I'm just going to take you on a brief tour looking from the intersection we were just at Central Ave, along Tookany Creek, all the way out to 2nd Street. So this is just heading west from Central Ave. You can see there's an earthen footpath. I'm not sure if this was formally designated or if this is just pedestrian traffic that has developed this trail over time. As you continue west, you enter the Veterans Park parking lot. This could definitely be utilized for a trailhead as we move forward. You can see just north of this, there's 2 sections of trail. One section follows Tookany Creek Parkway, and there's also a footbridge, if you just can notice it just beyond this truck here, that crosses the creek, and there's an earthen path that continues all the way up to Jenkintown Rd. Looking north from Veterans Park, you can see there's a guardrail and a about 6 foot wide crushed stone pathway. This is a great feature for walking and some mild bicycle traffic, but it's not perfectly ideal for all modes of transportation. as you can see, the bridges are fairly narrow, and we just want to make sure that each of these features is usable by every trail user. So we might be making some recommendations to either widen some of these. We want to hear from you and see what your thoughts are regarding that. This would be looking just north of Tookany Creek Parkway. This is Cheltenham Park, I believe. And this is owned by Cheltenham Township and could provide the alternative routes to connect up to Conklin Swimming Pool, as well as over to Burholme Park. So if you were to climb up the hillside from that last picture and pass through the church property, we'll be speaking with all of the landowners along this route to find out their thoughts and if they might be amenable to something like this. It would bring you up to this great community resource at the Conklin Swimming Pool. That was this connection here. And you can also see, as Bob went over earlier, that connection up to Burholme Park, another great community resource. So this is just south of Jenkintown Rd. You can see, looking across the creek, you can see that earthen footpath that I was mentioning that continued up from Veterans Park, and also the asphalt that continues on the opposite side of the creek back down towards Veterans Park. So this creates somewhat of a loop. Being a runner myself, I see the value in crushed stone and earthen footpaths, and we just want to make sure that whatever we propose is suitable for all modes. We might even be looking at an earthen trail on one side and a slightly widened asphalt or crushed stone trail on the other side. Looking across Jenkintown Rd, you can see the existing trail continues as an asphalt, about 5 foot wide pedestrian walkway. It climbs up the hillside here, it's quite steep, along Tookany Creek, and brings you back down towards the fire training area. Off to the left-hand side here, you can see what is actually Ashbourne Meadows. This is what will be developed in the future years, and we'll be speaking with and have spoken with some of the developers there to make sure that what we recommend really ties into some of the work that they are doing. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but you can see there's numerous options for tying into some existing bridges, making sure that we make those connections out to Jenkintown Rd, and actually tying into the community itself. This is that same location at Jenkintown Rd. Just noting here that there is a utility line that follows the creek corridor. Oftentimes utility corridors are great resources for trail building. This is just walking along that section through Ashbourne Meadows. This will be the portion that is dedicated to Cheltenham Township, and we're working very closely with the township to make sure that the recommendations that we bring through this portion of trail tie into Ashbourne Meadows, as well as bring these gorgeous views of Tookany Creek. This is one of the bridges that is to be proposed by Ashbourne Meadows as being rebuilt. We want to make sure we tie into there, as that will be a key link into the new development.
Hey, Doug, let me just note
Yes.
that we're about 35 minutes into the presentation, about 10 if we want to stay on schedule, but take your time.
Absolutely. I will move our way through here. So we're just approaching New 2nd Street. This is one of the existing crosswalks across Tookany Creek Parkway between the fire training area and the school. So we want to make sure that this is a consistent trail layout. You can see it's asphalt on the south side of the road, and it's a crushed stone on the north side of the road. This is it continuing towards New 2nd Street. You can see it narrows down as it shares a bridge over Tookany Creek. I'm going to enter one more poll question here. So this is a question regarding the connection up to Conklin Pool and Burholme Park. Just curious how many people would like to see that connection made.
Well,
All right.
Okay. So you can see 90% of respondents have stated that they would like to see that connection made. Okay. And Rita, I'm going to ask you to go directly to the next question here.
All right.
So this is in reference to this section of trail as we approach New 2nd Street. Do you feel safe on this existing section of trail?
I'll give it another 5 seconds. All right.
Okay. So as you can see, this actually had some mixed response. So 46% said that they do feel safe utilizing this existing section of trail here, and 31% say they do not. Obviously, everyone has their different safety levels. I myself would probably bike on certain roads that some people would probably not. So, and I'm sure there's plenty of members of the community that would feel the same way. But we want to make sure, once again, that everyone feels comfortable along whatever we develop. Okay, and there's one more poll question here. So would you feel safer if the trail was wider and separated from the road? And we're going to ask you to select all that apply.
Give it another 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. So although many people had stated in the previous question that they already do feel safe along this section of trail, it seems that everyone would feel safer if the trail was wider and also if it was separated from the trail. It's great to hear. Okay, and now let's take a look along this final section as between New 2nd Street and all the way out past Harrison Ave to High School Road. So as Bob mentioned earlier, this first section that I'll be showing was already proposed in a previous study. This is considered Trail Section 3A, and it was done by RBA Group in the past. So we'll make sure that any recommendations we make both look into and tie into what has already been recommended. We don't want to make repetitions here. We may make some recommendations as far as a crossing or whether we potentially look at coming under the road with the creek. But I already know that there's a bridge proposed across Tookany Creek Parkway to get into Gimble Park. This is Gimble Park here, a great community resource, and it'd be fantastic to tie into. Looking north from Gimble Park, from Harrison Ave, there's a couple of options here. There's a small section of Tookany Creek Parkway that dead ends. There may be an option to come up this side and potentially jump across the creek. And there's also a rear alley here that could be a shared use pathway. It may not be an actual trail, but it could be a shared directional route that ties behind these houses out towards Mill Street. This is that alleyway. And sorry, it's Mill Road, not Mill Street. So this is where it comes up and ties out to Mill Road. Tookany Creek Parkway, that section could come up the other side and potentially bridge across in one area. As you approach Mill Road, it's a quiet one-way road. We're going to look at some options for potentially bringing a side path or shared road route up towards High School Park. Just looking back from Mill Road down the creek here, you can see there is already a recycling center that encroaches on the creek, so bringing a trail up through this area is quite challenging. Continuing north here, this is High School Park. great community resource. I know there's a number of farmers markets and community events that take here throughout the year. We obviously want to make sure that we tie into the work that's already been put together. Friends of High School Park has done an amazing job of developing and maintaining this trail. And whatever we put through, we just want to make sure is in alignment with their goals. This is as the trail comes out to High School Road. And we're going to enter poll question number 5. So should the trail surface through High School Park be updated?
And give it about another 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That took a while to pop up on my screen, Rita. Maybe let's give people just a little bit more time.
All right.
Okay.
Are you seeing the number of respondents? I'm not seeing a lot. It looks like only 7 or 8.
I have 84% have voted so far, so.
Okay, it just must be slow on my screen. Okay, yeah.
No worries. We're getting some great responses here. So 28% say that they know that they like the park today. I fully expected that many people would like the surface. I love asphalt I love crushed wood pathways. Great for running on. 51% have said that they would like to see an updated trail surface. And about 21% say they're not quite sure. So we'll be listening to all of these responses and making sure that whatever we recommend really ties into the goals of the community and make sure that this is a surface that meets all of your needs. Once again, there is options for having 1 or 2 trails through a corridor. Not that that's something we're necessarily looking at, but you could potentially have both an asphalt trail and a wood chip trail. Let's take a look here. This is poll question number 6.
All right, this is our final poll.
Okay. And these relate to the images that I have on the screen here. So what multi-use trail type do you prefer? We recognize that a number of you have already responded to our questionnaire on trail surfaces, so we'll be making sure we get information from both sides here.
Doug, I think it's also true that when possible, different surfaces work better for different uses.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you can't find a compromise one that works for both. Mm-hmm. That's the time that you might do 2 trails. It's like one on one side of the creek would be, let's say, crushed stone. The other one could be asphalt. There are lots of possibilities that we're looking into.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here are the poll results. We have 49% saying that they prefer an entirely crushed stone trail. Crushed stone, like Bob was saying, it is actually suitable for both cyclists and for pedestrians and walkers. 13% say that they would like an asphalt trail, similar to what you're seeing here along the Wissahickon. And 38% like to see a mix of asphalt and crushed stone. It's interesting to me, no one likes the concrete. I actually also prefer the asphalt and crushed stone, so great response, thank you. Okay. And then obviously at the end of the trail, the terminus of this study is to look at to High School Park, but we will be making sure that we make that connection over to Elkins Park train station. There's numerous restaurants and resources downtown. We want to make sure that that is an easy, walkable pedestrian connection. Okay, at this time, I'm going to pass this along back to Patrick. He's going to go over some information about our breakout group discussion.
All right. Before I take us into breakout groups, or really that Rita will take us into breakout groups because we are wonderfully on time, I want to point out that if you haven't been looking at the chat, there's been a really rich conversation going on in the chat regarding some of the safety questions and some of the accessibility questions. This is a feasibility study, so again, your speaking up about concerns you have of that nature really helps our team to figure out what you may want. I just want to say about accessibility and about the surface, just to address it out loud. Doug did a good job of it, but in the chat, there were several comments about strollers and the fact that strollers benefit from pavement, for instance, and also wheelchairs and those who are really otherly able and struggling perhaps with access. So just keep some of those, I'll say, acts of kindness in mind when you think about the distinction. And what's interesting in the case of this facility, which Doug has alluded to several times, I think you have the opportunity to have all of the above. I think that in some cases you can have one side of the creek be one thing and another side be another. And great facilities have been built around our region that pair, as the poll question brought up, pavement with a softer surface adjacent. And so it's really figuring out how to do that, where to do that, which is part of what the feasibility study addresses. Now, our facilitators who are on the call, be ready. Rita has already decided sort of groupings, and I think that you're ready, Rita, to send each of us into the breakout group. There are some specific questions that we would appreciate your addressing. Your facilitator will go into this, but we would like a community representative to serve as a spokesperson just to feed us a few of the most important points when we come back together in about 20 minutes. So with that said, Rita, do you want to, oh, let me be clear. You will have to choose to elect to go into your breakout room. So watch for a little pop-up and elect to go into it. So again, those of you who don't know Zoom, you'll have to click on that when it comes up. So thank you, Rita, send us away, huh? Are we all back?
I think so.
We're here.
All right. So we had a great conversation in my breakout room. And Rita, if you could just inform me, how many breakout groups were there actually, so I just know that number?
We had 7 rooms.
Okay, 7 rooms. So I'm gonna mix it up and mess it up a little bit. I want to start with group number 4. Who was group number 4 and who's going to report out for group number 4? Please give your name and give us a minute or two of the highlights of your conversation.
So you're just going to type in the chat box if you were the reporter for that group.
I forgot to tell people that, yes. We're going to have to, so everyone, if you can type in the chat box your name and which group you'll be reporting for. I see actually, so I'll change direction here. How about Dottie Baumgarten from group number 3 go first? Let's unmute Dottie Baumgarten.
Great, thanks. So we had quite a bit of interest in the trails and lots of support for it. Several questions came up in terms of connecting to other areas like the Pennypack Trail. A couple ideas were specifically asked, are we looking at connecting to Myers Elementary? Are we looking at connecting to Jenkintown train station and how we're doing that? There was a question about about what maintenance is going to be happening in the future, who's going to maintain the trail. Specifically a question about the crossing at New 2nd Street. That's really an unsafe area there. Positive statement about sidewalks close to Myers Elementary being easy connections to the park there. If signage would be put up there, that there would be some good connections there. And a question about bike theft safety, so that are there going to parking areas along the trail where you can lock up your bike. I think that covers it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I see Robin Irizarry is reporting for Group 5.
All right, I'm muted there. Thank you, Patrick. So Group 5, we had a few themes, primarily safety. We spent a good deal of time talking about that new second intersection that Dottie had mentioned as well. People coming down, speeding really quickly through there. How can we get people across there safely? We talked about maybe narrowing the gap that pedestrians have to cross, like we saw in some of the examples earlier. We talked about signals. The idea came up: would a bridge be, even feasible given the size of that space? We talked about safety for kids trying to get to schools, trying to get through the neighborhood, for kids as well as pedestrians in general. We talked about access to amenities in the community like libraries and pools. We had a positive, intent towards that there. Specifically, one that we talked about was Roland and trying to figure out how to connect Roland Library, considering the steepness of the grade back there. How could you work that out? One thing that we didn't get to discuss too much, but I had added at the very end, was also just talking up the idea that this could be really helpful for alleviating traffic, especially if kids are able to walk and bike to school. Traffic on this side of the village is really congested, rush hour. So if there's more people on trails and biking, we don't have as many cars, choking up the neighborhood.
Hey, Bob and Doug, I wanted to invite you that if you have questions for the report outs, I think you should feel free to jump in. I made a mistake, and I should have asked the speakers to identify themselves in terms of where in the community are you from? Dottie, are you still able to tell us where do you live? What part of the community?
I'm in Glenside, but I often walk right along the section that you are looking at with my sister-in-law who lives in Elkins Park.
Lovely. Robin?
I live right along Woodland Ave in Cheltenham Village, right on the Philly Cheltenham line in Cheltenham.
Wonderful. John Raish, Group 4. John, where do you live?
Hey everyone. Hey Patrick.
Hey.
I live actually over closer to the Jenkintown Wyncote train station. So when we get to phase 2 of the feasibility study, we will be talking about the trail near my house. But so yeah, I had Group 4. Great conversation. We got cut short. We could have kept going, but we had a mixed group of folks from Cheltenham and from Philadelphia, mainly, Lawndale, Longcrest-ish. So it was good to see kind of folks kind of all around us getting involved here. As far as trail connections, seemed like we hit all the big ones. There was some conversation around to what extent we could create more of a trail up along Jenkintown Creek, which would run north, up toward Township Line, connecting the hospital up there. I guess that's an Einstein hospital. There was talk of connecting with a library, a smaller library. I didn't catch the location there. So, and then there was talk of, opportunities to connect with Colamy. The second half, we started talking about hopes and dreams of the trail, and I think there was some pretty good consensus around safety, safe places to run and walk, and the other theme was a connected trail. So, I don't know how many people know me, but I'm on Cheltenham's Environmental Advisory Council, and back the end of 2017, our township commissioners signed the Circuit Trails resolution, and they basically said that we want trails in the township because the residents want them, and more importantly, we want our trails connected to the network of trails. And many of the folks in my group here agreed with that. We talked about how, especially during the pandemic, now we're driving to other trailheads with the WIS and Pennypack, and then we do our hikes there, and we want more trails here in Cheltenham. We want them connected, and we want to be able to leave our houses and do our hikes and walks and bike rides.
That's great. Bring it right to the present, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody for group 2. So if there was a group 2, could you enter your name in the chat, please? But let's go to Alexandria Khalil with group 1. And I was part of group 1, and I know we had some very exciting ideas. Alexandria, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Patrick. I think almost everyone in the group was outside of Cheltenham. And they were really interested in seeing, connections to the Jenkintown train station. They'd like to see the trail extended further west to Arcadia. They said the westward expansion would be great. I just want to say real quick kudos to the TTF group. A comment was made, the more the trails are used, the less that there is dumping. So kudos to the TTF group for all that they've been doing. There's concerns with the crossings at Crescentville Road and Adams Avenue. So they felt that had to be taken care of. There are concerns about water issues, that they were afraid people would now pollute more, dump more trash. And that in fact, some trash cans had been removed on the trail that had been put there. And they would love to see, for what are your hopes and dreams, walking marathons, connecting of people, renovated benches. They thought it would improve the economy in the various areas. They'd love to see different types of outdoor gathering. Beer gardens were real big, ice cream trucks, water trucks, bathrooms were a big issue. Yes, and so that there has to be, we heard like in other areas that people defecating and urinating along their trails, and so that has to happen. That has to be addressed. Safety is really important. Women and children's safety. ATVs and dirt bikes are using the trails now. Children are being left alone on the trail. Another great thing, and this goes back to the TTF group, artwork on the trail would be greatly, the expansion of artwork on the trail and civic expansion would be really appreciated. The artwork there currently is really appreciated. There is concern about repair. Let me see if I'm saying this right. Riparian destruction, that is a concern.
Yep.
The quality of the water we drink, and that goes back to the trash. There is a fear that more trash will bring more people bring more trash. However, they would like to see also improvements, if possible, in the combined output sewer area. I think I got everything.
That was a great report out. We had a rich conversation. Naturally, my ears perked up around water ice and beer. I think that we talked about making sure that concessions were possible at places along the trail, and places for actual gatherings. There was specific mention of a beer garden, and I think that the beer runners are well represented tonight. Now, how about Joanne D'Alessandro, who represents Group 6?
Yes, hi, this is Joanne. Yeah, in Group 6, we had a lot of
just tell us where you're from, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am right from the village, Cheltenham Village. I live right near Central and Tookany, so I'm very close to the Parkway. And so a couple of our concerns were basically the vegetation. It seems, especially with the COVID, a lot of people are now walking the trails, a lot more people. So, and they're trying to practice social distancing. So they're using both sides of the parkway. And when they're walking on the one side, which is technically not where they should be walking, a lot of the vegetation is coming over into the street, so they have to move into the street. So I guess we were just wondering who is responsible for cutting the vegetation. Also, one big thing that was talked about in our group was to the connector for Gimble Field. That one was a connector that we felt was very important to do, basically because connecting that would connect it over into more commercial businesses as well as the EP train station. And, you know, we just felt like that would be good for the community, and to try to focus on that first. Also, we were wondering about time frames. I know a lot of this has been talked about throughout the years, but I don't think we've ever had like any kind of time frames on when these connectors are, you know, perceived to be put into place. Bathrooms was another one, of course, along the trail, and connecting Ashbourne, where the shovel shop is, to Levick, or near the Melrose Golf Course. It's very, you know, it's not very wide there. There was a bad accident a few weeks ago. So it's not, like, to me, a very usable path right now. So they were just some of the things that we spoke about and had concerns on.
That's great. Thank you very much. A good report out. Well, they've all been great. How about we go to Group 7, and I understand that that was Jessica, Timothy, Greta, and Chris. Who's going to make the report out? Is that going to be you, Chris? Chris Corbin.
Okay, thanks, Patrick, and hi, folks. I think I might be the special case in this one, as our PEC representative from the Western PA area. I can't say I'm super familiar with some of the spaces we were talking about, but we got some good conversation in either way. And we had some of our participants from Cheltenham overall, Jessica with Run With Me, Tim with the Historical Commission, and Peg right near High School Park, and Gimble Field. So we had a pretty good representation overall. We had some main things pop out to us initially. Some with concerns with routing the trail potentially too close to the creek, and specifically the bend around the creek at Gimble Field. It was noted that this area is potentially susceptible to flooding, and at this point, stream restoration might be more of a priority than the trail. But also led to the thought that potentially one of these things can help the other along. So that, I think, was kind of our theme for our group. Some of the opportunities that are concerns, and how to view some of those concerns as opportunities. We've got some routing concerns that have already been touched upon, specifically the new 2nd Street crossing where the parkway ends, being a potentially and specifically high-risk area for trail users. We've got some opportunities for lighting, being a thing that would be very helpful to trail users, but also potentially undesirable to nearby residents, with the trail being pretty close to some of those residents. Also some concerns over folks using the trail just to hang out and party rather than for recreation and transportation. And I kind of shared some examples from Western PA where the increase in more legitimate trail use has led to a decline in some of the more scandalous activities. But overall, there was a feeling that it'd be great to see the trail come to fruition, as long as there's a good balance between some of the concerns and the nearby resident concerns, I guess. Yeah. Jessica, Greta, anybody else want to jump in? I did cue them up and let them know that they might be we might be twisting arms for some extra information.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a comment in my group about how more trail use further down in the Tookany Creek Park has actually perhaps had that effect that you've talked about, Chris, maybe of reducing some of the more, I'll quote you, scandalous activities and brought about more of the regular pedestrian and other types of users. I think we have one more group to go, which is group 2. Mm-hmm. And I think that's Julie and perhaps Eric Horowitz as well. Julie, you're going to go ahead?
I'm happy to go. Eric, do you want to jump in as well? I don't see him.
He made a comment in the chat box about a hopes and dream for connecting to the historic Lamont neighborhood. And
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Station. Yep.
Oh. All right. Well, go ahead, please. One of you.
Julie, feel free to go. I've got some things happening here that are distracting me at the moment.
Oh, okay. So we had the group included folks from Jenkintown and Cheltenham, which was great. We talked about interest in getting to Center City, how wonderful that would be to be able to get to Center City from Cheltenham. We also talked about connecting history, looking at some of the amazing historic sites in Cheltenham, particularly Lamont as a neighborhood, really those getting people to those incredible historic sites and using the trail and streets to do that. People also talked about really wanting to connect to the Jenkintown train station on that side of the township. We talked about how dangerous New 2nd Street is. And we also talked about, that people really want, the feeling is that people shouldn't have to drive to get to a trail. It should be right down the street from them. They shouldn't have to put their bicycles on the back of a car. They should just be able to ride right out of their backyard. So I think that was most of that, which I think was pretty exciting. It was a
yes,
good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Eric, did you want to contribute or add to that in any way?
I think that covered it. I wasn't able to pay attention to most of what Julie was saying. I'm sorry.
This is what Zoom is about. We're all in our own homes and there are children and pets and other distractions. Folks, if you have any other questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. I want to note that there was a question raised about a very important issue both in our time, but especially for Cheltenham and for this trail, which is diversity of participation. And, it's interesting. I had meant to say something in my opening remarks, and this gives me the chance. One of the things that I worry so much about using Zoom is exclusion. Naturally, attending a meeting in person can be exclusionary too, because there's childcare, there's transportation, there's jobs that get in the way. But with Zoom and with a meeting of this nature, there's bandwidth and there's technology and there's whether or not you can participate fully because of those sorts of barriers as well. So I noticed that one of that Jenya Naliweko has posted Hex Inclusionary Trail Planning book in the chat, but I want to say to every one of you that if you have a friend, an acquaintance, a neighbor who is someone who represents some diversity, is different than many of the people on the call, I would hope that you would talk about the trail with your neighbors and your friends and talk about this meeting and encourage them also to participate. We have to reach out and encourage participation. So I would urge you to do that. I'm not seeing any new questions in the chat box. Are there any, if anybody wants to say something, put it in, just give me your name in the chat box and I'll acknowledge you. But I think we may be moving to wrapping up. Bob and Doug, do you have anything you want to contribute after hearing all that great feedback from the group?
Yes, this is Bob, I do. One of the things I kept hearing was the desire to link to other things from the trail. And I think if you look at the map that was in with the questions, what you see is that the Tookany Creek Trail is like a main highway, right? And And if you think of York Road as the main highway, it only works because the rest of the street grid feeds into it. Right? In the old days, only the main roads were paved and everything else was a mud bath. So unless you took a trolley or a train, you didn't get there. And I think the thing that people are saying that where we've tried to push is like at Ashbourne Meadows to see that the links come out to the community. But at the same time, what it will take is working with existing streets to make those connectors, to the main spine. And by doing that, whether it's with sharrows and enhanced sidewalks, there are things that can be done that are not a full-blown circuit trail, but nevertheless would get you around some of the bigger streets that people were complaining about, like having to ride on New 2nd Street to get to the creek. So we would want to, we're not going to plan out the whole township, but we're going to make reference to that. And I think a township-wide walking biking plan, which incorporates this trail and other major trails like the Cheltenham Trail, is fine, but then you really have to look the way that Montgomery County has it, making it possible to go from any point to any other point with less intrusive improvements, but ones that are nevertheless effective.
Doug, did you want to add anything? I'm seeing a couple of very important questions I want to address in the chat box. Doug, I was wondering, could you stop sharing your screen so we can all see more of each other?
Absolutely.
It'll bring back the grid for those who have the full grid on, and you can see few more faces this way. Doug, did you want to mention anything that you learned or that you're going to take away from this conversation tonight?
I mean, I think the main thing is really that we heard from so many different communities. It's great that we heard from Cheltenham Township residents, but we also heard from people from Philadelphia, up in Jenkintown, and Western Pennsylvania. So
we had a Springfield resident in my group as well.
Absolutely. So it's fantastic to see the community come together and reach out and recognize that this is a community trail. It's going to reach more than just the local residents. And just as the existing trails in place already reach Cheltenham Township residents. So it's great to see so many people coming in and planning from the ground up. It's going to be a great process as we move forward.
Thank you. There have been questions about what comes next, and I'm going to just say that the process includes that a report with a set of recommendations will be released, and I'm going to ask you, Bob and Doug, to comment on timing and how you see things playing out moving forward. But as I mentioned at the very start, this process is not so much a decision about whether or not to build a trail. It's a decision about what a trail could be. And then the community decides about moving forward with whether or not to obtain the funding and commit to the process of first full design and engineering, which is significant, and then getting funds, some of which can be obtained from federal resources and state resources, from our local or regional planning agency, the DVRPC, but there will undoubtedly need to be some money from Cheltenham Township, and these are tough times. So I just have to say that no matter what happens, the trail isn't going to be built tomorrow. Trails take time to build, and I would venture it'll be 3 to 5 years before you see a trail, just to be realistic. But coming back to next steps, Bob or Doug, could you just describe what next steps would be?
Yes. Doug, chime in if you have something you want to add. What we see in the process now is taking all the questions and comments that we've already received from the survey and from some interviews, and all the comments and questions that we got tonight. We'll certainly want to get back to some people to review them in more detail. But this then gives us the basis of taking our physical observations of what's out there and to start to identify specifically, what right of way are we looking at, which property owners we have to talk to. And the idea would be that we would come back with a draft plan early in the fall. It's already, tomorrow is July 1st. So we'll be working through the summer and the early part of fall, and then come back with a draft plan that will be reviewed by the study advisory group, as well as the public, as well as representatives of the community and others. And then from that, in the final plan, we'll not only show where it's recommended that the trail goes, what's the priority for development, it doesn't all happen at once, what are the costs, who would actually take the responsibility for seeing that it gets funded, that it gets built, and then also operated and managed. That's very important. There's no point building something if no one's going to be available to take care of it. So there are lots of options, and we'll be looking at all of them for those different things, and then coming back, and hopefully then the report becomes not just something on a shelf, but it becomes a cookbook for going ahead and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just say that that would mean another meeting in the fall to actually share those results, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And undoubtedly, we would create some sort of opportunity to present that to the township commissioners as well.
Certainly.
That would be the normal process. And so there would be an opportunity to move this conversation into your municipal hall, to have that conversation as a community with your elected officials. So Joanne and and Cindy had asked about next steps. If you have any additional questions, I think they could speak. Did that answer your questions? And Peg, I think I answered your question as you were typing it, which is no decision has been made to build this trail. That's a decision that comes after this process. And again, it's a community decision that will take place with your elected commissioners. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Julie, do you want to bring it home and wrap us up? I think we're right on time. Or close to it.
Close to it.
Sure. I think this was an amazing meeting. And we really appreciate everybody taking the time. I don't know about you, but my stomach has been gurgling the entire time because I didn't have time for dinner. This is again, as Patrick said, this is a project for Cheltenham and its neighbors. And I would encourage you all, we have a stakeholder advisory committee, and their job is to help reach out to make sure that we are talking to all the different groups and, all different kinds of folks in the township, but we need your help to do that too. So if there's anybody, as Patrick said, that you think we should talk to, any churches, any other organizations,
please tell us.
Please tell us. Email Xenia. He's amazing. He's been doing a lot of stakeholder interviews. So if you have a group of friends that you want to bring together to do a Zoom call or to provide additional information about, connecting your street to the trail, I think that's what we want to do. We want to try to make this as responsive as possible. This will also be, and tell your friends to go look at the page on the TTF website. I think if you just Google Tookany Creek Trail Study, you will get there. And there's a blurb there, and there's also, that's where the survey is. And we will be updating that, and we'll link to this. This will get posted on YouTube, so you can watch it, and we'll probably have our incredible intern Emmett summarize what happened at this meeting and provide some additional resources. It also seems like people are interested in learning more about the Tookany Creek Trail. So up until 3 months ago, we did monthly walks for groups in the Tookany Creek Trail. If you haven't been on that trail and you would like to come on a walk with me or anybody else, please let us know. As Robin knows, we're really happy to get folks out on the trail. There's some really beautiful artwork and some really incredible spaces to see. We'll send you the link. We have an interactive map at the tcpkeepers.org website. That's the Friends group for Tookany Creek Park. And we also have printed maps that we can send you. We have those in English and Spanish that show all the gateways on the trail. So I think, this is all about, we also, I just talk to your commissioners and let them know how much you care about this. I get to do my political thing here, but they work for you, you elected them, and you should let them know how much you care about this. I think we've heard in a lot of ways how important this is for Cheltenham's history and Cheltenham's students and people wanting to get out and connect and economic development. So they need to hear from you about how much you care about this and why, as Patrick always says, you know, why this is important to you, what it will do for you and your family. So now everyone should go eat dinner.